Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case of Sarah Everard, and obviously this one has been in the news a lot recently in the UK, and I am doing this case because I think what happened to Sarah was obviously devastating and tragic, and it bears a message, like such an important message for other people that just really needs to be shared, at least in my opinion. And it does. Her story, for those who may not have heard it, if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, just enlighten some things that maybe you could do to try and help, you know, I don't know, to try and stop these situations from happening. And I'm not saying that it will certainly stop them, because it might not, but at least if you do these things or try these things, then maybe, just maybe, it can save some people if this ever happens again. Which, I mean, it probably will. This case is still very, very raw, and honestly, I don't mean any disrespect for me making this video quite early after, obviously, everything has gone down. I normally wouldn't do them so quickly, and so please don't take this as me being disrespectful in any way. I just think that her message and her story is very important, and what happened to her, and needs to be spread far and wide. Sarah Everard was born on the 14th of June in 1987 to parents Jeremy and Sue in Surrey, England. She had an older brother and an older sister. She went to Fullard School, and not only did she do well there, she was also very well liked. When it came to going to uni in 2005, she decided to study human geography at Durham University. In 2008, after getting her bachelor's degree in geography, she moved to the south of London in Brixton area, where she would work as a marketing manager. Now, she always liked to travel in her life, and on one occasion in January 2013, she got to, you know, fulfill that dream, or at least a section of that dream, because people who like to travel would love to do it all the time. So she went to South Africa, and she spent 7 months there, which is just amazing. Such an amazing thing to do and an opportunity to have. When she got back, she worked in a few different agencies, and then in February of 2021, she got a new job working for a digital media company as a freelance group account director. Sarah was described as such a bright young woman and just a complete joy to be around. She was very much a woman that you could depend on. She was always very thoughtful and would always put other people's needs first and just try to help them. She also had this amazing sense of humor and would just light up the room that she was in. Genuinely, she was such a big-hearted and kind-hearted person that she would just do anything for anyone. Her family are very proud of her. On the 3rd of March, Sarah had gone to a friend's house in Clapham, where her and a couple of others had met up for dinner. Now, around this time, COVID measures were still being enforced, and people weren't really supposed to be out gathering, you know, seeing friends and family and things like that. They were only supposed to be going out to do shopping, short periods of exercise, things like that. Obviously, people still did. I'm not saying that Sarah was the only one that did, because that is by no means the truth. People broke the rules all the time. People still went out, met with friends, met with family, you know. They just did. Let's just say that it wasn't really unheard of. So Sarah's enjoyed her lunch with her friends, and she leaves the house at about 9 p.m. for a 50-minute sort of walk home. She has headphones in her ears and this blue-green jacket on, and off she goes. It was quite cold as well at the time, and very dark, and so, you know, she was in a scarf and coat, and off she went. She walked from Laithwaite Road to Pointers Road, going through Clapham Common, which is this big park, and also called her boyfriend Josh, which they then chatted and stayed on the line for around 40 minutes, ending the conversation at about 9:28 p.m. They had spoken how they had plans to meet up the next day, and then Sarah simply vanished. Obviously, Josh was supposed to meet her, and she didn't turn up, and so he was worried. After attempts at contacting her on numerous occasions proved futile, you know, her family, her friends, Josh, everyone were trying to contact her, and none of it was getting through. She wasn't answering, so they immediately was very, very worried. At 8 p.m. on the 4th of March, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was reported as missing. It was on the 5th of March that a specialist crime unit got involved and the missing persons case was well underway. Police were trying to get together her last known movements. They searched the park that she had crossed through. They searched the streets that she may have taken for her route home. They knocked on doors. They literally spoke to a ton of people in the area just to see whether anyone knew anything. Her boyfriend shared a photo of what she was wearing, and it was mainly, like I said, that green jacket that she was wearing. That was like the focal point of it, because obviously green is quite a sort of a standout colour, and so they were hoping to get something from that. Maybe somebody recognised her from the photo with this coat on and realised that they had actually seen her. During this time, the police received a lot of phone calls, and so obviously they were looking into all that as well. They tried CCTV and they found her on a ring door camera on Poinders Road, and then 4 minutes later she was actually caught on the dash cam of a police car passing by. Now the problem here was that they found her up until that point, but then there was nothing of her afterwards. A lot of people had like ring doorbell camera things, and so you would expect that if she is walking down that road, which they know she was because they saw her on CCTV, that you would see her further along, but they didn't, and so they knew that most likely she never got that far, kind of thing. With that in mind, they turned to the public requesting any dashcam footage, anything that anybody had around that area on that day, around that time, to see whether they could find anything of Sarah. At this point, they were really hoping that the public would come forward with CCTV, and it would be a lot easier because of COVID and because not many people were on the street, so they would be able to find her. That was the hope, and it actually worked. It wouldn't take long before the police actually got hold of some footage from a bus that had gone down that road. Bus. That's my commonness coming out, I apologise. Going down that road, and it actually caught sight of Sarah. You can see her in the green coat. She was seen talking with someone on the pavement literally minutes after ending that call with her boyfriend. You can also see this white Vauxhall Astra parked close to the pair, and it's got its hazard lights on, and of course they presume that this was the car of this unidentified person she was talking to. A little later on, this car was caught again on some more bus cam footage. This was at about 9:38, and on this one they actually caught the license plate of that car. And so began the process of trying to track that down as quickly as they could. A witness would also then come forward to say that they did in fact see Sarah talking to this guy, and that this person actually went on and arrested Sarah. So the police were waiting on the details of this car, and they finally got that back, and they found out that it was a hire car from Dover. The person who had hired it left his name and address, and they found out that this person was called Wayne Cousins. And Wayne was actually a police officer. Yes, he was an officer of the law. He was eventually arrested in connection to the disappearance of Sarah Everard. He was 48 years old at the time, a constable with the Metropolitan Police. He was a married father of 2, and he lived in Kent. In his young years, he spent most of them in Army Reserve. He decided to join the force in his late 30s, initially protecting nuclear power plants, before eventually joining the Met Police. He would drive about 2.5 hours from his home in Kent to London, where he worked, essentially, so he had a long commute every sort of day, and he was actually an armed protection officer who was tasked with guarding the embassies in London. Now, Wayne, I don't know, like, how this didn't come to light, but he actually had 2 occasions of indecent exposure incidents sort of tied in with his name. Once in 2015 and one 3 days before Sarah went missing, apparently. These were supposedly reported to the police, but they were never followed up on. He had also gained the name, whilst in the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, of the Rapist. So yeah, I don't really know the ins and outs of that. I just know that that is what they nicknamed him. So Wayne had planned the entire thing out, and not too well, I might add, because he just literally hired a car in his own name and then, I don't know, it was caught on camera straight away. But anyway, on the 20th of February, he went ahead and he hired that Vauxhall Astra, using again his own name and address. He went and bought a roll of self-adhesive carpet protector on Amazon along with a handcuff key. On the 2nd of March, he starts his 12-hour shift at 7 p.m, finishing on the 3rd of March at 7 a.m. Then that morning, he travelled to Kent to get the hire car, switched over from his car to the hire car, and then made his way back to London. I believe he drove to a few different places, but eventually would end up sort of in the same area as Sarah. And whilst all this was happening, Sarah was making her way up to her friends with a bottle of wine in hand to enjoy, you know, a lovely meal with her friends that she'd not been able to see for a while, most likely. Then, as Sarah was walking home after the night had finished, Wayne stops her in the street. He was off duty. He was wearing a police belt, but obviously he was in an unmarked car. Well, unmarked car. It was a hire car. Not that Sarah was to know that. And he was wearing plain clothes. But he showed her his police warrant card before handcuffing her under the pretense that he was arresting her due to her breaking the COVID rules. And Sarah, like many others, would have believed Wayne. He was a man of the law and she had broken the rules. And so everything seemed legit. She had never been in trouble with the law before, and when a police officer approaches you and tells you that you are doing something wrong, and again, COVID was a very sort of convenient thing for him to use at that time, and then they arrest you, you don't really often put up a fight, especially if you've never really been in trouble before or anything like that. You just think, well, I'll just go along with it, and you know, you'd be devastated, don't get me wrong, but you would, because you think he's a police officer. And so you would go along with it. She didn't put up a fight, not that many people would. She thought she was in trouble and that she would be taken to the closest police station. But unfortunately, that was far from the case. He had handcuffed her, put her in the back of the car, and she obviously thought that she was going to be taken to the station. They passed what would have been the closest police station and a few more along the way, and Wayne never took her into any of them. Instead, he drove her the 2.5-hour journey all the way back to Kent. That would have been such a long drive, and at that point Sarah would have known that something wasn't right. She was a smart woman. She would have, I just don't even want to imagine what would have been going through her mind on that car journey, how frightened and terrified she must have been, that she put her trust in this police officer thinking that he was arresting her like he said he was, and it actually seemed like he wasn't, because he wasn't taking her to any police station. Just what must have been going through her mind at that point just completely breaks my heart. Everything she must have been feeling, it's just, honestly, it's awful. At 11:43, the pair were in Dover, where he transfers Sarah to his Seat car, and then he drives her to a secluded area. Between 11:53 and 12:57, Wayne's phone pinged in the area of Seibertswald. I probably said that wrong, I apologise. And it's believed that is when he actually went ahead and sexually assaulted Sarah. He then proceeded to strangle her with his own police belt. He was seen on some CCTV footage buying a drink at a Dover petrol station. At some point during that timeline, he had taken a body and dumped it in a woodland area that he actually owned in Holdswood near Ashford. On the 4th of March, he disposed of her phone in a sandwich in one of their watercourses. The next day, he filled up a petrol can and went back and burned her body inside of a fridge. That afternoon, he bought builder's bags, which he used to hide Sarah's remains. He then took his family out on a day out around Holdswood, where he had literally killed and hidden the body of his young victim not that long ago. And they were just out having a good time, which is just unbelievable and just very, very sick as well. On the 8th of March, he reported himself ill from work, and the very next day is when he gets a visit from the police. After they had tracked him through the CCTV and found out that he was actually the last person to have been seen with Sarah. Around 40 minutes before they got there, he had actually wiped everything from his phone. So who knows what was even on there. The police cuffed him and they had a chat with him in his home, which was obviously filmed on dashcam, bodycam footage thing. In it, he says that he doesn't know Sarah, but then eventually says that, oh yeah, he knows that she's missing from about a week ago, and that was from the news. When they tell him that he's actually under arrest for the suspicion of the kidnap of Sarah Everard, is when he comes out with this elaborate story, and oh boy, is it a story.
Lent on by, I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever. They told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and take them to them. it then came through that they're going to, on my family, take them away and they'll use them instead.
He goes on about some Eastern European gang who were out trafficking women and that one of the girls had actually gone missing, and so he had to replace her, otherwise they would hurt his family, and so that he had to replace her with Sarah because they told him to, and that was the only way that he could protect his family. He went on to say how, you know, when they asked how they contacted him, he was like, they were just there and they told me to go here, there and everywhere, and they would speak to me through that. He didn't know who they was. You know, it was a whole load of spiel that nobody really believed. On the 10th of March in 2021, at around 4:20 p.m, police searching Holdswood actually found human remains. They were in a large builder's bag and were situated approximately 100 meters from the plot of land that Wayne owned. On the 12th of March, Sarah Everard's body was identified to be Sarah through dental records. A post-mortem revealed that she had died due to compression of the neck, and Wayne was charged with Sarah's murder. He would later admit his guilt of the kidnap, sexual assault, and murder of Sarah Everard. On the 16th of March, police continued to comb woodland in Kent, and they eventually, using divers, found Sarah's phone. On the 30th of September in 2021, so again, not that long ago, Wayne Couzens was given a whole life tariff for the horrific murder of Sarah Everard, meaning that he will never ever get out of prison. Sarah's case was enormous around the UK especially, and in certain parts of the world. It led to this huge outcry for women's safety and referred back to cases such as, you know, Grace Mullane, where she was just murdered by a man, and it was a massive spark of why can't women walk alone kind of thing. But to me, you know, there is one message that rings very clear in Sarah's case, and that is, if you find yourself alone with a police officer in plain clothes in an unmarked car and you have any doubts about them whatsoever, there are a few things that you can try to do to try and, you know, confirm that this person is who they say they are, what they are arresting you for, or whatever is legitimate, because unfortunately in Sarah's case it was not. Firstly, normally police officers are in pairs. Obviously Wayne was alone, and so if this is not the case, you have the right to question them. You have the right to question them anyway, but more so, you know, if they're on their own, what they are doing, why they're doing it, you know, ask them questions all the time. You could also ask to speak to the control room using their radio, or call 999 yourself to find out who they are, call the station they belong to, even 101 if you can. Now, obviously Wayne was a police officer, and so if Sarah would have called the station, they would have confirmed that he was a police officer. However, he was off duty at the time, having completed a 12-hour shift guarding the embassy, and so COVID was not his duty to be carrying out whatsoever, and it just would have made the department aware of what was happening and probably may have actually prevented Wayne from doing what he did. They could have sent out officers to support or anything like that, or maybe they would have even told him to let her go. Now, you can also call a family member, even a lawyer if you have one, a friend, just anyone to let them know what's happening. Now, if, say, like on Wayne's part, maybe she couldn't use a phone, maybe he wouldn't allow it because he was arresting her and that was his excuse, well, then just scream. If you're scared, draw attention to yourself, scream, do anything you can to get people to come over. You know, if they're trying to get you in the car, and people hear you screaming, they're going to come over, you know, try and tell them that you want an actual police car to come and collect you rather than an unmarked car, or insist that they call another officer. You have these rights to do so, especially in the wake of such a tragic case. So please, if you do find yourself scared alone with an officer, try and do any of those things. Make sure that what they are doing is warranted and legitimate, because with Sarah's case and Wayne, it was not. And it ended in the loss of such a young, vibrant life. Honestly, this case has really touched so many people's lives, and it is so devastating to think that she was literally walking home from seeing a friend and a police officer, a man of the law, pulls up, like stops, arrests her, and it's just somebody that she put her trust in, that a lot of people in that situation would put their trust in. And this is the man that did this to Sarah. It's just so frightening. And this case really hit me hard, to say the very least. And he planned it all out. He hired that car. He drove miles away from home, and he was out that night looking for victim. And unfortunately, Sarah was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong circumstances, i.e. COVID. And if COVID wasn't a thing, maybe she wouldn't have accepted being arrested. Maybe she would have screamed or something like that. But because COVID was around and she had broken the rules, she just figured that he was legitimate and that she was going to be taken to a police station, but she wasn't. This monster took away Sarah's life from her loved ones, from the ones that loved her the most. And my heart honestly goes out to all the family, to everyone that has been impacted by this case, and just the huge hole that she's left in their lives. And although it will never ever bring Sarah back, her memory will live on, and her story could potentially help so many more people around the world. It just goes to show that monsters come in all different shapes and sizes and all different disguises. And some even look like police officers. So yeah, that is the end of this case. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Sarah Everard. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!